going to touch them much, the blonde woman said, waving her sword in the air. Or someone is going to get fixed, the woman in the coat added. The wolf clambered to his feet and eyed the woman. Back off. These are my kills. You back off or I'll take your other eye, the woman said. The woman with the sword replied. It was then that Sabrina noticed that the wolf's left eye was white with blindness and framed by an ugly scar. The monster growled and leaped at the blonde woman. She swung her sword and hit the beast in the arm. The wolf shrieked and swung back, hitting her so hard she flew against a tree. The brunette rubbed the glowing ring against her jacket, and another blast rocketed at the monster. The wolf leaped out of the way, dodging the projectile by inches. The woman with the sword sprang to her feet. With the wolf in pain and confused, she climbed up onto his enormous back. Raising her weapon higher over his head, she brought the hilt down hard between the beast's eyes. He staggered, dazed. He's all yours, sister, she shouted to her companion. The dog-haired woman pulled a wand from inside her coat. She flicked her wrist and said, "Give me some chains." And a ray of light shot out of the wand's tip. The woman's aim was perfect. A second. Just waiting for this to load. Oh, wrong page. Just wait a few seconds, and I'll have this fixed. Is it this one? Please feel free to contact tunnels on carriages. Contact our supervisor directly at Is it this one? On the route of the chain, based on the direction to which the chain is going. Thank you. Okay. The dog-haired woman pulled a wand from inside her coat. She flicked her wrist and said, "Give me some chains." And a ray of light shot out of the wand's tip. The woman's aim was perfect, and a stream of particles fluttered out of the wand, forming a chain so thick it looked as if it could tie down a battleship. The chains themselves weaved around the wolf, binding him tightly. He struggled, snarling and snapping at the woman, but he was momentarily helpless. "Who are they?" Daphne whispered to her sister. Sabrina searched her memory for any reference to a couple of tough chicks who could take down the big bad wolf. She'd never read anything in the family journals about them. "I was hoping you would know." The blonde woman turned to Sabrina and looked at her closely. Suddenly, her confident face turned pale, as if she had just seen a ghost. "It can't be," she began, but she didn't get to finish. The wolf broke loose from the chains with a powerful shrug. He pounced forward, slamming into the woman and knocking them both to the ground. "I've been waiting a long time for this meal," the wolf said, licking his uncle's jaws. Said a voice from above them. It was deep, but had a playful, boyish quality. Sabrina looked up and saw a man with golden hair descending from the trees. On his back were a pair of huge insect-like wings. "I hate it when people threaten my family. It's so, rude." An arrow flew from a crossbow in his hands. It hit the wolf in the leg and the monster bellowed, crashing to the ground. The fairy attacked again, his head morphing into that of a saber-toothed tiger. He sunk his heavy fangs into the monster's back and the wolf shrieked. "We need to go get help," Sabrina said to her sister. She snatched the little girl by the sleeve and pulled her into the woods, leaving the battle behind. "But the house is back the other way," Daphne cried. "We're not going to the house," Sabrina said. "Granny's at the bank, and so is our secret weapon." Chapter 6. The girls hurried through the woods, clambering over rocks and down hills until they finally found a road. It was there that Daphne pulled away to catch her breath. "We should go back home and get Uncle Jake," the little girl said. "He's not there, remember?" Sabrina said. "Everyone is out running errands." "But what about those women and the fairy? We can't just leave them back there. He'll kill them," Daphne argued.
I think the three of them can defend themselves, Sabrina said as she scanned the edge of the forest in case the wolf had indeed slaughtered the odd trio and was now on their trail. Besides, we're just a couple of kids. We need help if we're going to try to stop Mr. Canis. What kind of help? Sabrina approached her sister. You remember the key that Mr. Hampstead gave us before we left New York City? Daphne slipped her hand inside of her shirt and pulled out a necklace. Dangling from its end was a small silver key with several numbers engraved on its side. This? Sabrina nodded. Remember, Hampstead gave us this and told us to use it only if Mr. Canis ever lost control of the wolf. It opens a safety deposit box. Hampstead said there was a weapon inside that could stop the wolf in his tracks. Daphne looked down at the silver key. What's a safety deposit box? It's like a safe. You put your valuables in it, they keep them in the bank. That's where Granny is. I know. She can help us. Sabrina took Daphne's hand. We have to hurry. Unfortunately, the road they were on was the long way to town, and it took several hours of steady walking before they came across any hint of civilization. The first thing they recognized was a farm they had driven by many times. Granny had told them it was owned by Old MacDonald, the farmer from the famous nursery rhyme. But as they approached, they were shocked to see that the farm looked as if it had been abandoned. The fields were overgrown with weeds, the barns were falling down on themselves, and the cattle pens and livestock houses were empty. As they got closer, they realized that the farmer's house had been destroyed by a terrible fire. Oddly, the destruction appeared to have occurred long ago. What happened? Daphne said, asking the question Sabrina had knocking around in her own head. I don't know, Sabrina said. The granny mentioned this? Daphne shook her head. Come on, Sabrina continued. We can't hang out here all day. I think we've got another half an hour of walking before we get to Main Street. They soon came across the rusty railroad tracks that ran along the Hudson River and led to the train station in the center of town. As they walked along the tracks, they saw more surprising scenes. The stern of an enormous sunken ship was sticking out of the water. Several broken down cars lined the grassy beach. When they finally stepped into town, they noticed a sign above the train station. It had once read, Welcome to Ferryport Landing, but someone had crossed out the Ferryport and added a more sinister message. The sign now read, Beware! You are now entering Ferryport Landing. Even more shocking was the state of their town. The little shops were abandoned, the doors torn away and windows broken. Many stores were in flames. There were sounds of fire alarms in the distance, but no sign of any fire trucks. The streets were deserted, riddled with potholes and smoldering automobiles. Sabrina couldn't believe what she was seeing. I guess Uncle Jake isn't doing such a good job of keeping Baba Yaga in check. This is going to take an awful lot of forgetful dust, Daphne said as she gaped at all the destruction. When they came upon the bank, they were stunned to find the building was nothing but cinders. Everything inside it was burnt to black ash, including the teller's windows, the ATM, and most important, the safety deposit boxes. There was nothing left. Granny! Daphne cried, nearly in hysterics. Sabrina reached down and scooped up a handful of ash. It was cool to the touch. Daphne, this happened a long time ago, Sabrina said, trying to reassure her sister while deciphering the puzzle before her. If the bank burned down this morning, why is the ash cold? Sabrina looked around the little town. The streets were empty. In fact, there wasn't a living soul in sight. Where were all the people? Something's wrong, she said. I must be having another hallucination. Well, I'm having the same one you are, Daphne said. Suddenly, the street went dark as if something had blocked out the sun. Sabrina watched an enormous shadow zip across the street and vanish. The sunshine returned as fast as it disappeared. What was that? Daphne said nervously. Sabrina scanned the skies. It must have been a cloud. Just then, there was an enormous roar, like the angry threats of 1,000 lions. It rattled Sabrina's ears as well as a loose shard of glass in the window of Dr. P's abandoned dentist office. The glass fell from its frame and broke on the pavement. Clouds don't make noises like that, Daphne said. Clouds don't make noises at all. Sabrina continued studying the sky. She spotted something far off on the horizon. At first it was tiny, no bigger than a bud, but as it approached, Sabrina could see that it was actually quite large and incredibly fast. As it drew closer, Sabrina could make out its bright red wings, which spanned the width of a football field. It supported a huge reptilian body covered in scales and a long tail that slashed through the air. The creature's neck was snake-like and it had enormous teeth. Sabrina had seen a drawing of it in an old children's book. She had even seen a movie about a kid who had one as a pet. But this thing was no pet. Run! Sabrina yelled as she latched onto her sister's hand. Together they sped down the broken street, dodging potholes and burned-out cars. Sabrina, is that what I think it is? Daphne shouted over the monster's wail. And then the creature fell from the sky and landed in their path. It crouched down, almost like a cat, and sniffed the air around them. Its breath smelled of fumes and sulfur. Yes, it's a dragon, Sabrina whispered. The creature roared once more, and a blast of blistering hot air danced across Sabrina's skin. Luckily, the beast was too far away to burn them. Heads up, kiddies, said a voice from above. Sabrina looked to the sky, sure that the voice belonged to their only hope, Puck. But it wasn't Puck. Instead, it was the strange fairy they had encountered in the woods. He fell off the sky like a missile and planted his feet on top of the dragon's snout. The impact forced the beast's chin into the pavement, stunning it for a few moments. Then it reared back and belched a ball of flame at the fairy. The winged man was quick in the air, darting back and forth with amazing speed and agility, and a deadly missile never reached its target. But the dragon was not discouraged. It let loose a dozen more blasts at the flying man, edging closer to him with each attempt. Luckily, the fairy steered the monster away from Sabrina and Daphne. You have to come with us, said a voice from behind them. The girls spun around to find the blonde warrior woman. She had her sword drawn, while her sister, the dark-haired woman, was holding a wand that glowed with green energy. We're not going anywhere with you, Sabrina said, stepping in front of her sister. She clenched her fists and snarled, preparing for a fight if the older woman wanted one. She set her feet the way Miss White had taught her, but before she could even take a swing, the fairy snatched her and Daphne off the ground and hoisted them onto his shoulders like they were a couple of sacks of potatoes. There's no time to explain, the fair-haired woman said. We have to get to safety. If they find you out here, they will kill you. Who? Daphne cried. Who will kill us? The Scarlet Hand. Sabrina and Daphne shot a million questions, but everyone was ignored. Instead, the dark-haired woman reached into one of the many pockets on her jacket and took out what appeared to be a tiny blue marble. With her other hand, she snatched Sabrina by the arm. The blonde woman grabbed Sabrina by the other arm and then latched onto Daphne. Don't forget about me, the fairy said as he planted a kiss on the blonde woman and put an arm around her waist. That seems to be the end of this video. I'll send more later. Goodbye.